Tyler Feldman, Upper St. Clair Panthers.
Ben Bobick, Steel Valley Ironman.
Wayne Gandy, Haines City High School.
Chris Carter, Taylor Alderdice. This is the Steelers Squad Show.
Wave those terrible towels. It's the Steelers Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Pittsburgh Steelers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Steel City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From the steel curtain to the next generation, the Steelers Squad Show starts now.
That's right. This is the Steelers Squad Show right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Here we go. Tonight's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is right around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets right now. Again, I'm your host, Tyler Feldman, proudly born and raised in Pittsburgh and twirling that terrible towel ever since I can remember. Former Steelers offensive tackle Wayne Gandy is here tonight. Wayne, what's up?
What's going on, Tyler?
What's happening?
You ready to overreact?
Let's overreact. Let's underreact. Let's just flat out react. Locked On Steelers host Chris Carter, Double C. What it be?
I'm all right. Glad to be doing the live show with you guys. Always a lot of fun.
Hey, you know what? Taylor Alderdice. Nobody shakes the dice twice. You know, my dad went there.
Didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah, my dad grew up in Squirrel Hill, so, you know.
There you go. So your dad's cool. Why couldn't you be cool?
Well, a lot of people have been asking that question my entire life. So that's we're still figuring that out, Chris. And, hey, for the first time this season, we've got Double C, but we've also got Double B. Ben Bobick, the ambassador of Pittsburgh. Ben, great to have you on the squad.
Listen, guys, I am just humbled and happy to be here. I mean, this is anytime I get a chance to talk to Steelers, I'm in. You know, I tell you who really thanks you guys is my fiance Jessica, because she's like, you know, you talk to Steelers all the time. I'm tired of hearing it. So now I have you guys and everybody at home to chat with, and she could give her ears a break.
We had to really dig to get Ben on this show. You know, he's in high demand. And so we've got Ben, we've got Chris, we've got Wayne, and we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers 10, 11 days away from kicking off the season on the road against the New York Jets. We'll get to that game maybe later on in the show. But, guys, once again, we are here on a Wednesday night. Of course, no game this weekend, but you can still join us Sunday. We're still trying to decide if we'll do a Sunday morning or Sunday evening show, so stay tuned for that. Hey, let's talk roster moves. Roster cuts, the 53-man roster is out. If you've been listening to Chris Carter's show, the Locked On Steelers podcast, daily, Monday through Friday, he's been talking about it ad nauseum. Chris, let's first get your biggest takeaways, your biggest reactions to what you see with this 53-man roster.
I think that you see there's a lot of trust in depth, especially now that we have the practice squad, in the total 90 that they brought to camp, because they didn't go out and get a bunch of new guys. Like typically when you go get practice squad, you see some swiping from other teams. You see okay, let's go get this guy. Let's go get that guy. You didn't see that from this time around. In fact, you kept a lot of those same guys. Now, I still think some moves might be coming, especially maybe some help for depth on the offensive line, maybe one extra piece at wide receiver, but like at cornerback, you know, they put James Pierre on the practice squad. He'll be back on the roster at some point. But they straight up cut Chuck Clark, but his locker's still active in the Steelers locker room. So I'm expecting him to be back any second now. And I think you're seeing that hey, you know what? They liked what they saw out of a lot of guys that were down the depth chart. And that they kind of want to see how those guys play out. And I mean, listen, they have some depth issues, but as far as cornerback, linebacker, D-line, I think this might be the deepest that they've been in some of these positions in some years, because we've seen the years where one guy goes down and all of a sudden you're calling up practice squatters and you're calling up Miles Jack, who was learning how to fly a plane when they brought him back the last time. So I think depth could be a strength in certain positions. There's still others where it won't be, but I like some of it in some of the spots.
Wayne, what say you? What's your biggest takeaway from what you see from this 53-man roster in the practice squad?
I think it really shows how good of a preseason overall that this team had. When you think about the depth that they built, a lot of that you have to imagine was that they really couldn't decide. It's almost like they flipped the coin at a couple positions because they were so deep. And I think that reflects on the practice squad. Guys, they really was hoping to keep on their 53-man roster. They covered it and was able to squeeze them over on the practice squad and easily can put them on the field. And I think that's going to be the key for this team. It's more depth than it is necessarily talent in some positions, but that can win out over time, over a long season, that you can put a capable body that's already like a Beanie Bishop on the field with no problem.
Mentioning Beanie Bishop, one of the more surprising cuts in my mind, Ben, when you hear a name like Beanie Bishop, seeing what he was able to do during the preseason, does a guy like that getting slashed surprise you at all? What were your biggest takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, he was certainly a name that sort of jumps off the page at you. You think about, he was like the camp darling last year. I mean, everyone was so excited because the Steelers love their undrafted free agents, and Beanie Bishop coming in, especially just playing down the road to West Virginia. That was a big deal. But, I think it's great that they're, these guys were mentioned in depth, and that's true. And I think that's what's big about it. You see a lot of these guys that are hopefully sticking around played a lot of football. I mean, James Pierre, played a lot of football for the Steelers. He had a great camp. He was being I know he was being a lot more aggressive at camp too, making plays. I mean, Beanie Bishop is a guy that started games last year for this team and knows the system, kind of knows what's expected of him. So I think if that just shows you some of the weapons that they were able to bring in on defense that sort of switch, kind of refresh the pond, if you will. But, having guys like, Beanie Bishop, when people see that and they say, oh my gosh, what do you mean? He was our guy last year. He made, he was making plays in big games. But I think if he's someone they get to stick around on a practice squad, obviously, and just being there for depth purposes, that's a good thing, because this is a guy that was a contributor on the football team last year and certainly knows the system.
A reminder, this is a live show every Wednesday night, the Steelers Squad Show. We have one commenter saying live, multiple question marks, and then followed up with love it live, LFG. Yes, this is a live show. Come on. We're bringing to you Steelers Talk live for a full hour. Glad you're with us. If you have comments, please join the chat and maybe you will see what you say. Hey, we're talking secondary. Chris, I'd like to think that you mentioning depth, the secondary to me seems like that deep position led by bringing in Jalen Ramsey, Juan Thornhill, other notables. What say you about the depth of the secondary and how that can impact the Steelers' defense this season?
I think it could give them a lot of opportunity to switch up their coverages and to be able to plug and play guys this year. They're going to try to run a lot more man coverage this year than they have in recent years, because they're going to trust a lot of these guys to win in man coverage. Like, back when you think about go back to that 2021, I think it was, or 2022 game against the Bengals where they picked off Joe Burrow like 4 or 5 times in the first half. All they were doing was lining up like they were in man, but switching into zone, because they were like, oh, is Levi Wallace really going to go step for step with Jamar Chase? But now this year, they could be like, oh, no. Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter, they are going to do that. And so now when you fake, when those times you actually fake like you're in, like you're in man, you go to zone, teams might be more adept to falling for that because you're able to do those things. And that's where depth will apply. Like, I wasn't shocked by Beanie Bishop being cut. He was on my roster to be cut by like week 3 at training camp, because Brandon Echols was starting to play in the slot. Jalen Ramsey is in the slot. And in fact, that's going to be a key thing for tomorrow's episode for Locked On Steelers. Is the Steelers in general had kind of dismissed the slot position. You think back to Mike Hilton, who was an undrafted free agent. They loved him when he played, but he was an undrafted free agent, small guy who just played it really well and was really aggressive. And they were like, okay, we rock with this guy. But since Mike Hilton, did they invest a lot in the slot position? No, they brought in random guys to fill in the last couple of years. And then last year was Beanie Bishop and then Cam Sutton, who and both were, Beanie Bishop was fine at times, but was getting beaten man coverage a lot. And Cam Sutton was just all over the place. So what did they do this year? They said, Jalen Ramsey, go in the slot. And if Jalen Ramsey's not in the slot, they got this other guy, Brandon Echols, who could play outside and in the slot. Oh, and if either those guys are busy, guess what? Now we got safeties that can rotate into the slot as well. And I think all those things are what the Steelers are trying to do to try to say, hey, you know what? We're going to be as flexible and as versatile in what we want to do on defense as possible. And I think that is a good thing for what they're trying to do. It'll give Terrell Austin a lot more tools to play with when he's trying to disguise where guys are going to be.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the defensive side of the ball with these roster cuts and building the 53-man roster. What about on the offensive side of the ball? I think all the talk right now is about that wide receiver number 2. DK Metcalf, obviously that one guy, but Robert Woods gets cut. A little bit underwhelming, the veteran. What do we make of that wide receiver number 2 position currently? Wayne, what do you see right now from your vantage point?
I still feel like the team is in need of a second receiver. I mean, these other guys, when you look at the roster for me, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, they're great guys, but you kind of feel like they're still that third option in the route tree for Aaron Rodgers. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a move at that position by the Steelers by week 1 to figure out who is going to complement DK Metcalf. And we still don't know what DK Metcalf is going to provide for the team. Chris was in camp, so he has more of an understanding of what DK was bringing, at least to the practice field. But we right now are unsure about where he is in, moving to a new team, a new city, really trying to kind of resurrect his career in a sense. So hopefully he can bring what we think. But when you look at the roster, you don't really feel Robert Woods really at year 12. Unfortunately, that's what happens to veteran receivers. You don't have any special team kind of DNA in you at that point. So we can't keep you past the second receiver at that time, and you become a roster cut just because that 5th receiver, that 6th receiver, they're your special team aces. So you have to let Robert Woods go. But to me, I'm still looking for one of these guys to step up. Calvin Austin missed a lot of time. Roman Wilson, who's going to be the number 2 is still one of the biggest mysteries for this offense.
Ben, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most in dire need, how badly do the Steelers, Omar Khan, how badly do they need to find that wide receiver number 2 or just another guy that Aaron Rodgers can throw to?
It's probably in that 7 range, to be quite frank. It really is, but at the same time, we really don't know because the first team offense really hasn't gotten out there and played any preseason ball for obvious reasons. And what I really like when it comes to the wide receiver room is Scotty Miller had a great preseason, deserved his roster spot. I mean, he's a guy that I think could be that safety blanket for Aaron Rodgers, which just a veteran receiver, 2 veterans kind of on the same page. And I think that's just a good guy to have around. What I really liked about Aaron Rodgers, it was a few weeks ago, and it reminded me of the Big Ben days in the sense, well, obviously completely different context. Remember when Big Ben sometimes would call out a receiver or two and just say, hey, so-and-so needs to not pick it up, but, you kind of get the sense where he's like, okay, Ben's trying to
Eli Rodgers.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I love what Aaron Rodgers was talking about, having Roman Wilson, he has the potential to be a really good football player in this league. I think that was him publicly saying that we're holding this guy to a higher standard, not because, he needs to pick it up, because he has potential to be really good. And to hear that from a future first ballot Hall of Famer, you feel pretty good about Roman Wilson, but last year was injury marred season. You don't really know what you have. Calvin Austin as well, just being, his training camp being obviously, limited with his injury. But I think just comes down to, I think it's probably in that 6 to 7 range, just for the sole fact that we don't know. And we won't know until they line up on Sunday against the Jets when that time comes. And maybe not even then, we may have to take a couple games in to really see what we have. But I mean, you definitely need someone there to complement DK Metcalf for obvious reasons. But I think they have a group. Go ahead.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like there's fear that the wide receiver position is striking into opposing defenses. My thing, and how I think we should wrap things up here in this first segment. Chris, what have you heard about the wide receiver market for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Because there has been a lot of talk over the last week.
They're interested, but they're not interested in the sense that they're willing to sell the farm. Like, it drives me nuts when people say the Steelers are all in. If the Steelers were all in, they would have kept Minkah Fitzpatrick and they would have traded away draft picks for Jalen Ramsey. They would have made other big trades where they would have. Right now, they are all in as much as they are every year to try to make the best roster that they can. But they are not trying to compromise their future. They still see like, hey, this isn't the Super Bowl team. This isn't in this team. Like, you hope wins the Super Bowl. That'd be great. Awesome. Right. But you're thinking this team with the young offensive line, the young playmakers you've invested into the offense, the young guys that you're investing into the trenches on the defensive side of the ball. You're having faith that these guys are going to form the new core that will pick up the torch from TJ Watt and Cam Hayward. And then if you get the right quarterback for the future in this upcoming draft, then that becomes your next window. So if you're doing that, you're not trying to sell out and get some big name wide receiver that's going to cost you a first or a second round pick this upcoming year. You're looking for guys that you can probably swap some late picks on and say, okay, let's try to get this guy. Oh, this guy got cut by this team like a Kendrick Bourne if he ends up clearing there. I think that's what you're looking for. Like, the Steelers were interested in Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but the Niners were higher up in the waiver priority, so they get him. So the Steelers are going to continue to explore their options and to try to get somebody. But to me, the biggest thing is they're going to do this while not trying to, cost themselves down the line too much. I think a late day 3 pick or a day 3 pick swap, that's the highest that they'll go as far as giving up, or a current player who's like somewhere on the depth chart. That's the highest they'll go for a wide receiver 2 right now.
Current player? How about a former player? One guy who was once seen as a franchise quarterback, possibly here in Pittsburgh. He is on the move again. Yeah, I'm talking about Kenny Pickett. That's next right here on the Steelers Squad Show. But first, the NFL season is almost here. Yes, it is, and we cannot wait. And FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Why do you love using FanDuel? Well, I'm glad you asked. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even just jumping in live on the action as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, too, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. Plus, it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to those Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, back here on the Steelers Squad Show, proudly airing right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. 11 days from now, the Pittsburgh Steelers will be kicking off their 2025 campaign on the road against the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers will be the starting quarterback for the Black and Gold, facing his former team. And speaking of quarterbacks, how about former first-round pick for the Steelers? Kenny Pickett, from Pittsburgh to Philly to Cleveland and now Las Vegas. Yeah, the Browns trading him to the Raiders. Chris, you've talked a lot this week about the current quarterback room for the Steelers. So I said, you know what? What the heck? I feel like Steelers Nation wants to hear a little Kenny Pickett talk. So what do we make of him?
Don't do it.
What do we make?
I'll start the Kenny
Chris,
Kenny Pickett talk. I don't need any problems, man.
Chris,
the Pitt fans are going to come and kill me, man. I can't do it.
Well, that's why you've got 2 Penn Staters on this show tonight. So
Whoa.
Did I say that? Did I say that too loud? Okay.
We'll fall on the sword. We'll fall on the sword.
Yes, we will. Look, Chris, go ahead. What are your overall thoughts on the Kenny Pickett situation here right now in the NFL?
I think it's another sign that Kenny Pickett should have just toughed it out behind Russell Wilson and not wanted to be traded. Because if he had done that, then when Russell Wilson got hurt pushing a sled, he would have been the 6-game quarterback instead of Justin Fields last year. The only reason they traded for Justin Fields was because they traded away Kenny Pickett because he didn't want to be around anymore. And Mike Tomlin, as he said, he wants volunteers, not hostages. You want to be a hostage, get up out. And so then he went to the Eagles, and listen, he won a Super Bowl with the Eagles. Awesome experience. He'll have a Super Bowl ring for the rest of his life. You can never take that away. That is that is awesome for him. But the Eagles weren't tied to him. Nobody's going to be tied to him the way the Steelers we're going to give him a chance. So he goes to Cleveland. They say, oh, he's our starting quarterback. Psych, he's not their starting quarterback. It's Joe Flacco and a bunch of rookies. So now now you move on from him, from Cleveland to Las Vegas, and now he's going to bounce around there. And I think it's unfortunate for Kenny Pickett. It's just like, look, I covered this guy in college. amazing story for him coming back for a 5th year because of the COVID year, and then coming back and leading them to their first ACC championship. And that was a special run that he was on, and forever that's why a lot of Pitt fans love that guy. But he just didn't develop in the NFL. And yes, he didn't have a good offensive line. He had Matt Canada as his offensive coordinator. He didn't have the best offensive situation. But at the end of the year, when Mason Rudolph got those, he went 3-0 and led him to the playoffs. And that's where I think it's tough to say, hey, Kenny Pickett, great, awesome. He got totally screwed over by everything. Sure, it wasn't ideal, but the thing is, you fight through those non-ideal situations and you make it ideal for yourself. And unfortunately, he didn't. As a person, I like Kenny Pickett. We've always gotten along. He's always very professional with me, very nice to me, and we've always had great conversation. And I've seen him how he is with kids. I think that is that's a thing that gets missed because of all the other stuff that happened with Kenny Pickett. But it's just an unfortunate story of how hard it is to make it in the NFL and how quick you could go from being in the sun to being out in the dark.
Mike says, Pickett, I don't care. Bye. We've gained 20 viewers since we mentioned Pickett. So, hey,
it's the Pitt fans who want to fight those people. I guarantee you that.
Well, Wayne, what do you say about those Pitt fans that want to fight? And what do you take on this Kenny Pickett situation and becoming a young journeyman through the NFL?
Well, can I take off my reporter hat and put my player hat on?
I wasn't sure what you said you were about to take off, so I think that's fine. That's fine with me. That's totally fine with me.
Let's be honest. This is Kenny Pickett still on his journey, looking for somewhere to start. He felt like he was not going to do that in Pittsburgh, so he moves over to Philly. He can accept I can be behind Jalen Hurts. But I can't accept going to Cleveland. You said I was going to be the starter, and now you put old man Flacco in front of me. I'm still on that search. And players, a lot of times, this is what they become journeymen. They become journeymen because they don't want to stick it out in a situation where they feel like the person is in front of them, they shouldn't be behind. That is the true athlete. That is the true competitor. And a lot of times that is teams bouncing around. You take a Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston has accepted that he's a backup. And that's what he is. He will go to all 32 teams as that. But there was a moment in his mind that he was going to search out a place to be a starter. Geno Smith, the guy that Kenny Pickett is going to back up, did the same thing. He realized he was a backup. Now he found himself back years later in this starting position, and he's taken advantage of it. But he was trying to find a place to be the backup. Kenny Pickett right now, he's just not going to sit there. He's not going to sit there unless you make him feel like Joe Flacco is the starter in front of him, especially when he thought you brought him in to do that. So he could be on a carousel here for a while until maybe he accepts that is his role as an NFL football player, which is always hard to do.
Wayne, you make some really great points there. That player's perspective, I love it. Ben, what do you take on the Kenny Pickett carousel that he's on right now?
I mean, I'll be honest, when they signed him in Cleveland, I was like, he's going to start. I mean, he's going to be the starting quarterback there. And I thought he was 100% going to get a shot. Obviously, things pan out the way they did. They signed Joe Flacco. They draft 2 quarterbacks. But yeah, to be quite honest with you, I like the situation for Kenny Pickett now in Las Vegas. When you think about backing up a guy like Geno Smith's in his mid-30s, 34 years old. He's had some injuries in the past. I mean, he's as they say, a heartbeat away from taking starting snaps there in Vegas. And I think it could be a good situation for him. I really do. But it has been pretty wild to see. I think it's one of those things where it's like you look at two sides of the coin of, I always knew Kenny Pickett would be in victory formation in the Super Bowl. And then, it is in the context that it is, but I really do. I think Kenny Vegas it could be Kenny Vegas could be a popular thing this year. I think it's a really decent situation for him. It's a fresh start. And I understand, us two, Tyler, being the Penn Staters here. And so it's tough to say, but I mean, you know what? It is. Allow me just to pour just a little gasoline on the fire. I think it might be tough for Pitt fans to swallow the fact that he's now backing up a former West Virginia quarterback as their penance for not being a quarterback for the Browns. So you got to take what you can get.
I can see the signs. I can see the signs on the strip. Kenny Vegas. He'll save the Raiders. Look, I always thought it was interesting. I always find it interesting when the Steelers drafted Kenny. He's in the same practice facility. Chris, we talked about this last week, how convenient it is for you as a reporter covering Pitt, covering the Steelers. You're right there. Kenny Pickett was right there, and he played some great football at Pitt. And Pitt has had that lineage of great quarterbacks to come out and then do great stuff in the NFL. So I always understood the drafting. It's unfortunate it didn't pan out in Pittsburgh. It could have been a cool story. And look, everyone, we're all on our own journey. So I always like to root for Kenny. Hopefully it works out in whatever way he hopes it works out. All right, let's talk about the Steelers quarterback room, the one currently in place. Chris, what's the deal? Will Howard, Skylar Thompson, what can you tell us about the quarterback room right now as the Steelers go into the season? What does it look like?
Well, Will Howard's going to go to injured reserve. Skylar Thompson's going to be QB3, and I think it's going to be a temporary injured reserve for Will Howard. So if he's healthy and they want to bring him back in week 3 or week 4, then they'll do that. But I think that they're kind of in the position like, look, if our season comes down to QB3, it's already been pretty bad. I mean, 2019 all over again, right? So I think the Steelers are doing here is just saying, hey, Aaron's the starter, Mason's the 2, Skylar's the 3, and Will just sit back and learn. Keep understanding what the pace of the NFL is, and you know what? Maybe if he does come back and he's healthy and they like the way he looks, maybe they say, "Hey, we'll try to sneak Skylar Thompson on the practice squad so that Will Howard stays on the roster or something like that." But I also think that there's a possibility that, hey, maybe at some point if someone gets hurt, that someone's like, we need a veteran quarterback. Skylar Thompson, is that you? And so there's like a late day 3 pick swap there. I think something could be along those lines, but that's what's essentially going to go on here. Ultimately, the Steelers are just trying to set themselves up for drafting a quarterback next year. I think that's the ultimate plan here. So the goal is to just kind of prep Will Howard to be part of the competition, to make it to compete with whoever they draft in the first round this upcoming draft, and make sure that Mason Rudolph or someone else is also in that room in case both guys aren't ready yet.
The comments, people are really upset we talked about Kenny Pickett. You know what?
I told you don't do it. I tried to warn you. It's a lose-lose situation. They're either mad at you because you like Kenny Pickett, or they're mad at you because you hate Kenny Pickett, or they're mad at you because you're neutral on Kenny Pickett. So it's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, that neutral area is place.
I can't be neutral. Okay.
What I'm gathering is the Steelers aren't going to bring Kenny Pickett back in case they've lost a bunch of quarterbacks to injury this year. Hey, Wayne, bring us into the mindset of Will Howard, injured, on IR. How do you attack that, your first season in the NFL, to keep that level-headed mindset and that positive mindset going in?
He has to keep telling himself he's young and he has a long career ahead of him. I mean, right now he's in a good situation from the sense that you're on a team that's in flux at that position. Aaron Rodgers, we know one day or 1 year, he's not going to be here past this season. And then you look at your competition, Skylar Thompson, Mason Rudolph. You have to feel good. There's nothing you can do about an injury, but get well and stay with a positive mindset. I think Will Howard, his pedigree from college, will help him do that. He's been in a big program. Now he's in a situation where this is where he would have been most likely, regardless if he got hurt. He still would have been QB3. In my mind, regardless of how the preseason went. So he's not too far away from that. So right now it's all about getting healthy and not worrying about things that you can't control.
Ben, how do you see the Steelers' current quarterback room and what Will Howard might have to manage through here early on in his career?
You never want to see anybody get hurt for obvious reasons, but it's almost a perfect storm in a way where they're able to utilize the IR to obviously they weren't ever going to get rid of Will Howard. Obviously, they just drafted him, but they'll almost keep Skylar Thompson around and reward him for the preseason that he had because he really earned his roster spot. I mean, he looked great in the preseason, and you take it with a grain of salt, obviously, but it's a guy that came in and picked. And you have to remember, I think for a while there, Skylar Thompson was the only quarterback on the Steelers roster there in the offseason. And so he clearly made great use of his time and learning everything. And so I think it's a great asset to have because touching on what Chris said is, hey, if one team is in dire need of a quick quarterback fix and the Steelers have him and have his recent preseason tape, why not maybe grab another couple draft picks. I mean, that's what the Browns just did with, not to bring them up again with Kenny Pickett. They got a couple more draft picks, having that draft capital going into next season. So it's good to have that, a guy like Skylar Thompson. And like you mentioned, I mean, if we get to the point where he's playing, we're in a tough spot. But I just think all in all, it's just, you hate it for Will Howard because this preseason was his, not his moment, but his chance to go out there and show what he could do. And obviously everybody and a lot of fans love him, and a lot of people wanted to see him go out there and do his thing. And it's got to be tough for him. But you know what? Football is a game of adversity here, and he's battling some early adversity here, working through this injury and trying to find a place on this team. But I think keeping Skylar Thompson around is definitely a big deal for the Steelers because he earned it. And also, you know what? Hey, it could pay dividends down the line when it comes to potential trade or just having some more depth.
And Tyler, I think I played with the first. I played with the first Kenny Pickett. His name was Hank Poteet. I think Hank Poteet was. I think that when we left Three Rivers and we went to the new facility, we drafted Hank Poteet when we were splitting the facilities. So, and he was a fan favorite and very productive. Was Hank Poteet?
I bet what a name!
I think, yeah, all name team for sure. I bet you Hank Poteet has a shirt that says in block letters, "I was the first Kenny Pickett." I'm sure he's very proud to have that.
He scored a touchdown in the last game at Three River Stadium. I think it was against Washington that you guys were playing. He had a punt return that he scored. Yep.
Yeah.
How could we forget Hank Poteet? Chris Carter. Always remember.
Forever etched in history.
There's probably an engraving outside where Three Rivers was. I haven't seen it. It's not really talked about a lot, but it could be there. I'm just saying. Chris has just had enough. Let's get to break. Where have the Steelers had enough at a certain position? Is there concern on the offensive side of the ball? Not the running back room. We'll talk about it next right here on the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. But first, we have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you, the listener, the viewer. We've put together a survey to learn more about all of you in order to make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thank you for helping us out. This episode is also presented by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner, and you can feel the buzz. Yes, you can. Fantasy football season is here. Everyone's researching, drafting, and building their championship squads. My name for my team is Hank Poteet. I'm about to change it after this show. If you haven't joined a league yet, now's the time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm playing fantasy football on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're first-timer or a veteran creating your millionth league, Yahoo Fantasy is loaded with fun ways to compete and brand new features that make the game even better. With the season kicking off on September 4th, now's the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many fun ways to compete, including the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League mode. That's where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated weekly until one team is left standing. There's also the new Draft with Friends mode. Or if you prefer the classics, you can get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. No crew, no problem. Join a public league. That's the easiest way to play. Again, the NFL season kicks off September 4th. So don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Back here, final half hour of the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. Ben Bobick, Wayne Gandy, Christopher Carter. I'm Tyler Feldman. So glad you're spending your Wednesday evening with us as we talk Steelers. I was talking with Ben Bobick yesterday. This is his first time on the show, so get in the comments. Congratulate him. This is the ambassador of Pittsburgh. No one loves the city of Pittsburgh more than Ben Bobick. I'd go to bat for Ben Bobick with loving the city of Bridges. But let's talk about Jonnu Smith in that tight end position, because injury, practice absences. Chris, I'll start with you. What can you tell us about Smith and where that tight end position is as we head into the first game of the season?
Oh, we just actually talked to Jonnu Smith today. He's back in action. He's ready to go.
Okay.
So he'll be ready day one. I think there's excitement there of how they're going to use these guys. It's another reason why I think the Steelers aren't as aggressive in trying to go get a wide receiver too, because if you get another wide receiver, if you get a real wide receiver too, like let's say they brought in Terry McLaurin, right? And again, never was going to happen. He was always going to sign with the Commanders. I said that for months, but let's say you go get a guy of that caliber, you bring him in, then all of a sudden, when do you get to your double tight end sets, or when do you get to your see what Roman Wilson has? And I think that's where they're kind of like, look, we got Pat Freiermuth. We really like him. We went and traded for Jonnu Smith. We really like him. We really like the idea of Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson maybe as pairing wide receiver threes. Maybe none of them are wide receiver twos. But I think that's the flexibility that they want to have. Now, the key problem here is that if DK Metcalf goes down, you don't have a wide receiver one, and then you're really in the hole. But if DK Metcalf is healthy, I think they can balance out the lack of a wide receiver two, because they have guys like Jonnu Smith who kind of just plays wide receiver from the tight end position. Like he's not that much of a blocker. He's very much a guy that will route you up really quick, get open in different spots of the field. And Arthur Smith has used him in so many different ways. Go back to he had like a 50-yard handoff back in like 2019 or something like that with the Titans. He's a guy that's going to bring a lot to the table, and they're going to use him in a lot of different spots. So I think that he certainly opens things up. I won't say that he completely negates not having a wide receiver too, but he is going to be a matchup problem for teams. It's going to be up to Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith to find the right spots to use him and the other tight ends like that.
Wayne, a healthy Jonnu Smith, what do you think that does for Aaron Rodgers in this Pittsburgh offense?
Well, it helps him in the middle of the field. We talked about him being able to work the ball, take advantage of the middle of the field, something the Steelers have not been able to do. And you're talking about an offensive system with Arthur Smith when he was with Tennessee, when he came to Atlanta, and now in Pittsburgh, where they run a lot of 3 tight end personnel. You know, you hear the commentators, 13 personnel. It's just 3 tight ends out on the field. Pittsburgh did it. They ran that formation more than anybody in the NFL last year. So that's why you carry 4 tight end. Connor Hayward, he plays a lot of special teams. That helps you out as well. But you have to be very, very excited about what that position, Pat Freiermuth, what Washington can bring, and what he showed you, his ability with that kind of size. And I think when you look at them, Freiermuth, you look at Washington, those are the guys that are going to run the ball behind. And with Smith, that's who they're going to try to exploit, work the ball down the field with.
Ben, you were concerned yesterday, but we have Double C on the show, so he is here to eliminate those concerns. A healthy Smith, does that make you happy? Does that change your feelings about this situation at all?
Yeah, he took our bait, Tyler. And I was like, I just needed Chris to come on and say everything was going to be okay. And that's what we got here. We talked to him today. He's good. Everything's fine. But in all seriousness, though, I think it's just a matter of him just going out there getting some reps with the team. But just talking about the depth, and depth's been a popular word today, but especially in the tight end room, I just think Chris touched on him just being a matchup problem. I mean, just imagine a situation, and we don't have to imagine. We're gonna see it very soon, where it's him, it's Muth, and it's Darnell Washington out there on the field at the same time. I mean, that's a matchup nightmare in some cases, especially with Darnell Washington in the preseason that he had. I mean, he seems to really be coming on as a pass catcher, and he's just just a load to work with, man. I just think hearing that he's healthy is definitely a good thing, because I think it really is going to open up this Arthur Smith offense. It's really going to do what we want to see. We see him, what it could do with all these tight ends that he likes, tight ends that are very talented in that case. And I do think it could mask those wide receiver 2 issues, not issues, but questions, if you will, when it comes to it. It might open up the rest of it. But again, just wait to see it. We're just kind of waiting to see it. And I'm by no means implying that these guys are Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf and all these guys should have played the preseason. Absolutely not. But I just think it's, there could be growing pains early on. And so it's just, I think we're all just anxious to see, but it's definitely a good thing to see him back at practice. Just getting those reps, I think, is important.
Chris, I know you've been high on Darnell Washington during this preseason. If you had to rank the tight end room right now, who are you putting at 1? Who would you like to see? We could see these 3 tight end sets, and that could open up the run game, and that could help with that wide receiver too. But I don't know. Darnell Washington, to me, might have the best upside.
I think Fryman's still your 1. John is your 2. Darnell's your typical 3. But when you get to the red zone, Darnell's your 1. I think that I think one thing I saw a lot more in 7 shots this year, and something that I think that it was criminal they did not use the last 2 years, was when you get inside the 10, one of them first and goal plays is, 80, just run to the pylon and just stop and turn around. We're just going to throw you a jump ball. And you're just going to outleap everybody. And if they get it, if you drop it, oh well, just don't let the other team catch it. But you're going to get the first dibs. There were times in 7 shots where the defense and the offense would be going back and forth. The defense would be like, "Yeah, we're getting you," and Aaron would just be like, "All right, fade to Darnell." And it was just Sean Elliott's just like, "What am I supposed to do? I can't guard that. What am I supposed to do?" So that's where Darnell Washington, I think, is an X factor threat, is when they get in the red zone, actually use him. I know that you're going to be tempted, Arthur Smith, to want to, let's run this trick run play here where it's a handoff to Connor Hayward, or we're doing a triple reverse and it's going to be Roman Wilson throwing to Aaron Rodgers or something like that. Stop it. Just throw it to Darnell Washington. Give it just one time, like on a second down, just be like, all right, they stuffed our run. We're going to toss one to Darnell. If that don't work, we'll work something else out. But make it part of your offense. And also, I think Darnell, and I noted this throughout training camp, his route tree has improved. When he got to Pittsburgh, his route tree was flat and go. Those were his 2 routes. But now he's running corner routes. He's running shake routes. He's able to get loose. Now he still can't do a really good fire footwork to get loose on somebody. But he's so big that it's just, now that he runs like a decent route tree, team players have to be like, oh man, how do I want to try to get in front of this guy? Do I want to try to trail this guy? But if they throw it high enough, can I go up and challenge him up there? He's a unique weapon. I do think he has a lot of upside. I just think that a guy like Pat Freiermuth, you think about his quarterbacks: old man Ben Roethlisberger, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Justin Fields, and old Russell Wilson. Pat Freiermuth hasn't been in a system that's benefited him as a playmaker yet, and they have also avoided using the middle of the field for the past several years. They're going to open that up this year. I think that's why he can be a little bit more dynamic this season.
Word Eater saying 3 tight ends can threaten the run to bring the safety into the box and play action. The question is whether Muth, Wilson, Jonnu, etc. can make them pay so that DK can get single teamed. Makes a lot of sense. This conversation has me a little bit more excited about what this Pittsburgh Steelers offense could maybe be. Wayne, do you feel the same way, or did you already feel that way prior?
No, I'm excited about this tight end position. It has depth, and I think Arthur Smith is finally assembling the kind of personnel that runs his kind of offense. He has a particular kind of offense that everybody doesn't fit into. Everybody won't commit to. And I think now with these big bodies, the depth, and old quarterbacks, as Chris was mentioning, they like big targets. I don't know if it's because their contacts are a little loose, but there's no bigger target than Washington right there. And I think from college to pros, definitely his route tree has expanded. And most of that is because in college, he was only running those 2 routes. In that system. They were not asking him to do much, and now he's been able to expound upon that But offensively, I think they're going to be just fine. It might take a little time to get things going, so I wouldn't expect it necessarily to jump right off against the Jets. But I do see where they're going, and there's some semblance of a game plan of what they're trying to accomplish.
Darnell's route tree has expanded. The Steelers squad show tree has also expanded with Ben Bobick. Ben, any final thoughts on this tight end position before we head to break?
Yeah, no, you guys nailed. I have a great story with Darnell Washington, and it's funny you mentioned him in college. I mean, the other tight end in that room was Brock Bowers. So I mean, it kind of makes sense why he was in the position he was. But I was actually it would have been his last year at Georgia. I was actually covering a game in Atlanta. They were playing Oregon, the Bo Nix led Oregon Ducks, and they were just blowing them out. And I was shooting the game with my camera, and they ironically threw one in the flat to Darnell Washington, and he just flat out hurdled a guy. And I never forget just dropping everything, like, who in the world is this guy? I mean, he is gigantic and jumping over people. Sure enough, here he is on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, he totally could be an X factor. I mean, I think Chris nailed it. I mean, I think when it comes to the goal line, they just need straight Darnell packages. And you know what? And if teams try to game plan for that, good luck, because it opens everything else up.
All right, so the tight end position seemingly locked up as we talk about it on Locked On. What about this season? It is kicking off 11 days from now for the Steelers in East Rutherford, MetLife Stadium, against the Jets. We will have our final thoughts going into that game. I know we're a little ways out, but hey, we've got to talk about something, and there's a lot to talk about with the Steelers team. That's next right here on the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. Tyler Feldman, Ben Bobick, Chris Carter, Wayne Gandy, Locked On Steelers Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. A reminder, Chris Carter, the Locked On Steelers daily podcast, Monday through Friday. If you're not listening, what in the world are you doing? How are you spending your free time? Be better. Listen to Chris Carter weekly right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Chris, since you're covering the team, you've got boots on the ground. You've been talking about a lot of different areas of this team this week with different reporters who cover the Steelers. What is your biggest thought right now in this very moment about this Steelers team? It could be anything. We want to hear.
My biggest thought, geez.
Smallest thought too, right after your biggest thought.
I feel like there's a good chance this defense could be the best Steelers defense we have seen
since
like 2010. I mean I say 2010 because I believe 2011 was the last time that this team had a defense that ranked number one in points allowed. I don't think that they're going to be number one. I think they could be top 5. I think they could even be top 3. And particularly because I believe right now in what I'm seeing in the defensive front and stuffing the run. I think they'll be much better at that this year as long as Derek Harmon comes back healthy. I think YA Black's is going to be a welcomed addition to that. I think the linebackers are going to be cleaner this year, and they're going to be able to play that better. And if that happens, the way this pass defense unit is going to pair well with each other is going to be dynamic. And what I mean by the pass rush unit, I mean the pass rushers and the coverage guys. Because last year in that Chiefs game, when you saw Patrick Mahomes wasn't doing anything crazy. He was saying, "Hey, they're in zone. They can't run with our guys. Dink, 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 dink. I'm going to just get the ball out within 2 seconds." Quarterbacks with this coverage unit should not be able to get the ball off in 2 seconds and find a cleanly open wide receiver. With Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter, Darius Slay playing a lot more man coverage, also Deshaun Elliott helping out there. That's why Juan Thornhill is going to help out. I believe they'll bring back Chuck Clark to help out there. With the assortment of coverage men that they have, as well as Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen covering tight ends and running backs, it should force quarterbacks to hold on to the ball for at least 4 or 5 seconds. And then That's when all these plans to negate TJ Watt should start to kind of get ripped apart a little bit, because now at that point, you'll have where TJ Watt was getting negated was when the ball was out in 2 to 3 seconds. Now it's going to have to be out in 4 to 5, maybe even later sometimes. And that's where TJ Watt starts to eat you up. Or if you're double teaming TJ Watt, guess what? Now Cam Hayward's one-on-one, Alex Highsmith one-on-one, and you can't get away with just 1 or 2 second passes. If they stuff the run and that part comes to light, this defense can truly be dominant. And we've seen good and even very good defenses in recent years. I mean, to give Terrell Austin credit, I know a lot of people don't like him, but that guy has coordinated a top 10 defense in all 3 of his years. And top 10 is very good. That's in the upper tier of the NFL. But Steelers fans are used to elite. In the time that I grew up, the Steelers saw at least 5 or 6 number 1 defenses in like an 8-year span. It was ridiculous how good Dick LeBeau had charged up that defense. I'm not saying that they will be number 1, but I think that this will be the closest that you've seen to that. Then 2019, they were very good. 2019 to 2020, they were top 5 those years. I think they will be back in that category and maybe even ahead of them.
Just thinking about those Dick LeBeau defenses, I've got chills on my arms. Hey, Junior Mafia says, what church you go to, Chris? Because you preaching right now. LMAO.
My father called me the deacon because I could talk a lot when I was a child. And now you see I'm in a career where I talk a lot.
Well, hopefully he didn't call you a demon deacon at any point, because, we wouldn't want that, Wayne, do you see a top 5 defense here, or is Chris a little bit too excited about what could be? Do we need to tailor it back a little bit?
No, I think you should have high expectations of this defense. I'm excited to see what Jalen Ramsey brings moving around the field. I think just watching that last preseason game, I think we're going to see a guy that is going to give it opportunities to make plays in a way that we haven't seen since 4-3 was in the secondary. A guy that can cover the tight end, can come off the edge, that other teams are going to be confused by, whether they're in zone, whether in man. He brings that attitude. I think you really should, for the Steelers to go anywhere, the defense has to find itself in that top 5, 6, right in there to have any chance. And you have the kind of players, I think, when you match up what Cam Hayward, TJ Watt brings with someone like Jalen Ramsey, and even Darius Slay, just guys that seem to have that attitude of that the steel curtain used to have. And I think that's what I'm excited about, the personalities that are in the uniforms this year defensively, that have that edge, that want to prove. Even someone like a Cam Hayward, even though he solidified everything, he still seems that maybe y'all aren't satisfied, or maybe y'all forgot how great of a player I am. Father, I'm beating Father Time at this moment. So I believe defensively, high expectations should reign, and you should expect this team to lead like old Steeler teams from the defensive side of the ball.
Okay, the Steelers have a top 5 defense this season, Ben. How far can they go? How okay does the offense have to be for this Steelers team to be more than just we snuck into the playoffs type of team?
And that's what it comes down to, right? I feel like it comes down to the offense just needing almost just to be above average. If you have just an above average offense with that defense, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I mean, you're looking at a team that, obviously, go ahead, Chris. I can see you right now.
That's what the 2008 Steelers were when they won the Super Bowl. They were they were even more of an average offense with a truly elite defense.
Right.
The last 2 times the Steelers have been in Super Bowl contention, even the last 3 times, I'd say the 2005 team, it was a great defense with an above average to even slightly above average offense.
And that is to be cliche, it's the Steeler way, right? I mean, that's how they've done things. And I think they bring in a guy like Aaron Rodgers. He just seems refreshed. He really does. He seems like he's refreshed. He seems like he's healthy, and he's really excited to go make a run at this thing. If that offense can be above average and go out there and score the necessary points, that defense should be able to carry them the rest of the way, because they just have nothing but dudes on that side of the ball, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think, one guy in particular on that defense, I think we talked about him plenty, but we talked Jalen Ramsey and Juan Thornhill, Darius Slay. I think Joey Porter Jr. is coming in with a bit of a chip on his shoulder here in this season now. He's like, okay, you brought these guys in, not necessarily to replace me, but in his mind, maybe it's like, no, I want these. I want these opportunities that you're giving. I want to be that guy. And I think learning from them and just feeding off each other is going to do wonders for him. I think Joey Porter Jr. could be poised for a career season here this year for the Steelers, but it just comes down to that offense being above average. I love Jaylen Warren leading the pack there in the running back room. Kenneth Gainwell, they brought him in for a reason. I mean, this is a guy that found success behind Saquon Barkley, who had a career year. I mean, he talk about making the most of your opportunities. I mean, Saquon was the horse there in Philly. Kenny G, when he got his snaps, he made the most of it. They bring him in for a reason. I feel like they're very intentional, obviously, about the guys they brought in, and because they believe they could win now. And if this offense could be above average, I do think they could win one or two more games this season, not limp into the playoffs, compete for the division, maybe get a home playoff game. And then if you get that one playoff win under your belt, then and anything's possible, because you get that momentum, you get that mojo, you're rolling.
A lot of positive talk, and I do love talking about what could be for the Steelers team. But let's go around the circle here, the square, so to speak. Biggest doubt right now going into the season for these Pittsburgh Steelers?
Biggest doubt.
Biggest question mark?
I'd say it's the manifestation of the offense's balance. And I say that as a cop-out to talk about both the run game and the passing game. I think that there's potential for both. I like this offensive line. I like the way they've played, especially the first-team offensive line. I think that there's potential there. But as Wayne and I have talked about with you, Tyler, we have not seen the run game manifest too much in these preseason games with the first-team offense. Now, we've seen like good like spurts here and there. But and granted, you're not going to see a first-team offense just get to run the ball a ton in these preseason games because they're trying to save themselves for the regular season. But we don't know if this run offense is going to become an above-average unit. And if the run offense is an above-average unit, can the passing offense be an above-average unit? But if neither are balancing out for each other, can the offense be what Ben was just talking about? I think that's the biggest concern here, is that you need to see the offense manifest. I have a lot of confidence the defense is going to manifest who they are. But I think that the offense, and I think the offense will be a good unit this year. Like they were 16th in scoring last year. I think they'll finish above that this year. But that if there's something that's going to go awry, if there's something that's going to go off the rails and mess up the Steelers' season, it would be the offense not getting it together, the offensive line not finding a rhythm in the run game, the pass game not being able to feed off of that, and then an injury here or there derails a lot of stuff. That's the nightmare for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, is if that happens, then all that great defense that you have is going to just be spent on trying to get you to the playoffs again. And then by the time they get to the playoffs, you spent all your bullets and people know all your best shots. But if they can get to the playoffs where, hey, you know what, like the last several years, they have exhausted the playbook by week 12 or week 13. And it's like all the extra things that you're seeing, they've now put back out there. Whereas there were things that they were able to do in those playoff runs, like the Super Bowl 43 run, where they were able to do things that caught teams off guard in the playoffs because they didn't have to use it. Because why? They could just beat you straight up and they could just say, you know what? We got the guys right here. That's what the Chiefs do a lot. Like they when they just have the guys, they can just beat you straight up. They don't need to call some crazy play up here to trick you. But when they get in the playoffs, they might switch it up a little bit on you. And I think that's where, if the Steelers can win enough on just their skill, the Jimmys and the Joes side of things, instead of requiring X's and O's, because they win a lot on X's and O's. I think people don't realize that. But if they're able to win like that early this year and then get that to like the later part of the season, then they can open up that bag maybe like week 16, week 17. And then in the playoffs, teams are like, wait a minute, this isn't what they've been doing all year, because they've been able to save it because they've been winning so much with these more fundamental ways of winning.
Wayne, Chris brings up the offensive line. What is your biggest concern with the position that you know very well, that you know more than most?
I would say depth. It's the one position where we feel comfortable with the five starters, but we don't know what's really behind them. And I don't know if the Steelers know exactly what they have in that position. And Chris hit on it. You're going to have to be able to run the ball with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback because he's an older quarterback. He's going to have good quarters with his arm. He's going to have bad quarters. But how you maximize that is that you're able to run the ball so that he doesn't always have to feel like he's in some situation that he has to make some special play. And that's where the run game comes into play. Can Jaylen Warren be the running back we're looking for? Running back one, I guess, is what we would call him. Or are we going to do it by committee? As Ben said, you got Kenneth Gainwell, you got a young Caleb Johnson. So will a team learn throughout the season that it's going to have to be a rotation, or will Warren be the main guy? But I think offensive line-wise, you have young talent up there, Broderick Jones, Fatanu. They both show that they can, with the switch, can hold their own. But you got to find a well-balanced offense for this quarterback to have any success.
Ben, do you think the running game is the biggest concern, or where do you see question marks for this Steelers team right now?
I like where they're at in the running game in the sense of what they have on paper. I think Jaylen Warren fits the scheme better. I think he's one of those guys, just a downhill runner, and that just gets it going. I think that's just what they need. But I think touching on what we were talking about earlier, man, I think it just has to come down to who's going to step up in that wide receiver room, because we talk about it. We talked a lot about the tight ends today. Hey, maybe they could, cover up for this. Maybe they could. Someone in that wide receiver room has an opportunity to really step up and grasp and take this wide receiver 2 role by the thorns. And Chris touch on it too. Sure, they might be interested around. They're not fully pulling back, but it has to be the right thing, because they have to feel good about what they have in that room to go into week 1 in the Meadowlands there and have their, with the guys they got and saying, okay, Roman Wilson, what do you got? Scotty Miller, do you have some left in the tank? Calvin Austin, where you been? Can you step into this role? I mean, we're forgetting Benny Skoranek too. I mean, he's a guy that could be a contributor, a safety blanket for Aaron Rodgers. I think the biggest concern is that wide receiver 2 in terms of, can someone come up and step up? And it's a fun thing to monitor, because there's a lot of guys in that room that have a chance to step up and take it. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think it's what also is going to be fun to watch, because I think they want to implement that intermediate pass game back into the offense, and Aaron Rodgers can do that. And you're going to need a wide receiver 2 to do that as well. So who's going to take it?
Who's going to take it? Sunday, September 7th, who will take it between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Jets? That's the first game of the season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ben Bobick, Wayne Gandy, Chris Carter, I'm Tyler Feldman. So glad you joined us tonight on this Locked On Steelers Squad Show. A reminder, you can listen to the audio of tonight's show on the Locked On Steelers podcast feed, wherever and however you podcast. Make sure you throw us a thumbs up and subscribe as well. And next time, hey, join the comments section. We have fun with the comments. I like reading them as we go through this show. Tonight's episode was also brought to you by Fire TV. Yes, Fire TV. It's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside 2-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. But hey, that'll do it for this midweek edition of the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. For Wayne Gandy, Ben Bobick, Chris Carter, again, I'm Tyler Feldman saying good night, and here we go. We'll see you again Sunday for more Steelers talk.